The leather chair in my office still had that new smell as I reviewed the expansion request from Sterling and Associates, the prestigious law firm where my stepfather Richard Sterling ruled as managing partner. His signature was right there at the bottom of the application, probably written with one of his precious Mont Blanc pens. 3 years earlier, in this same building but under very different circumstances, he'd stood over me at the maintenance desk where I worked night shifts to pay for my real estate classes. "A janitor," he'd sneered, straightening his custom-made suit. "Your mother must be so proud." Though what else could we expect from someone who couldn't even finish college? What he didn't know then, what none of them knew, was that every night shift, every floor I mopped, was funding my first property investment. While they mocked my dead-end job, I was learning every inch of Manhattan's most valuable commercial real estate from the inside out. My phone buzzed, a message from my assistant. "Mr. Sterling is here for the 2 p.m. meeting about the expansion request. Should I send him up?" I smiled, thinking of the last time he'd seen me 6 months ago at my mother's house. He'd made a point of explaining his firm's explosive growth to everyone at dinner, emphasizing how they'd soon be taking over the entire 50th floor of their prestigious address. "Send him up," I texted back. "And Sarah? Make sure he waits in the general reception area first. Like all other tenants." The security feed showed him pacing impatiently in the lobby, checking his Patek Philippe watch every few minutes. The same watch he'd waved in my face during one of his lectures about success. "A real businessman wears success on his wrist," he declared. "Not cleaning supplies on his belt." The maintenance belt I'd worn back then had been heavy with tools and keys that gave me access to every corner of this building, letting me study its systems, its tenants, its potential. While he'd been broadcasting success, I'd been quietly building an empire. "Mr. Sterling is getting rather insistent," Sarah messaged. "He's mentioning his golf club membership with the building's owner." If only he knew that the mysterious MJ Reynolds, who owned the building and now half the block, was actually his stepdaughter Maria Jane. The same stepdaughter he'd pushed aside at every family gathering, dismissed from every business conversation. I straightened my designer suit. Not that he'd recognize the brand, it was the kind of subtle luxury that only true wealth appreciates, and picked up his expansion request again. Sterling and Associates wanted to expand their offices, taking over the entire floor. The decision was entirely in my hands. "Send him in," I messaged Sarah. "It's time for Mr. Sterling to meet the building's owner." The security feed showed him straightening his tie, practicing his patronizing smile, the same one he'd worn every time he talked about my limited potential. My office doors opened and Richard Sterling stepped in, then froze mid-stride. "Hello, Richard," I said calmly, holding up his expansion request. "Shall we discuss your future in my building?" The look on his face was worth every floor I'd ever mopped. This must be some kind of joke," Richard stammered, his perfectly cultivated executive presence crumbling as he stared at me behind the desk he'd assumed belonged to MJ Reynolds. "You're the cleaning staff." "Was the cleaning staff," I corrected him, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Though those nights cleaning your offices proved quite educational. Amazing what people leave on their desks when they think no one important is watching." His face paled slightly as he slowly sank into the chair. "The building ownership documents clearly state MJ Reynolds." "Maria Jane Reynolds," I smiled, sliding my driver's license across the desk. "Mother's maiden name. The one you insisted I couldn't use because it wasn't prestigious enough, compared to Sterling." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The name he'd mocked now owned his professional fate. But the purchase price, the capital required. His legal mind was racing, trying to find a loophole, an explanation that didn't shatter his worldview. "Remember that worthless inheritance from my father?" I pulled up the investment records on my screen. "The one you advised Mother to let you manage, because I clearly couldn't handle real money?" His eyes widened as he saw the figures. My father, before his death, had left me a modest inheritance, one Richard had dismissed as insignificant compared to his law firm's earnings. What he'd never bothered to investigate was that the inheritance included shares in several emerging tech companies. Those shares, I continued, enjoying his growing discomfort, combined with what I learned working maintenance in this building, gave me everything I needed. Knowledge of the property, understanding of the tenants, and capital to make an offer when the previous owner decided to sell. The night shifts, he whispered, understanding finally dawning, weren't just about paying for real estate classes. They were my education in property management. Every leak I fixed, every after-hours access I monitored, every tenant complaint I handled, I learned how a premium commercial property really operates. I pulled up more documents on my screen, the building's financial records, tenant histories and future development plans. While you were mocking my janitorial career at family dinners, I was learning exactly how much your firm was overpaying for outdated offices with inefficient layouts. Richard's hand unconsciously went to his tie, a nervous tell I'd observed during those late-night cleaning shifts when he was preparing for difficult negotiations. Now, I said, picking up his expansion request, about this application. His professional instincts kicked in. The terms are very favorable. Our firm's reputation is exactly what it was 3 years ago when you told me I'd never understand real business. I cut him off. Though I particularly enjoyed your comments last Christmas about how the building's management clearly didn't understand the prestige of Sterling and Associates. The security feed on my desk showed his senior partners arriving in the lobby for what they thought was a routine meeting with the building's owner. Your partners are here, I noted, watching him squirm. Should I have Sarah send them up? I'm sure they'd be interested in learning who really owns their prestigious address. Richard Sterling, for the first time in my memory, looked genuinely afraid. Please, Richard's voice had lost all its usual authority. We can discuss this privately. No need to involve the partners. I leaned back in my chair, remembering all the times he'd used that same placating tone with Mother when trying to control a situation. Like how you discussed my embarrassing career choices privately with the country club board. Or how you privately advised my trust fund manager that I was financially irresponsible. The security feed showed his partners growing impatient in the lobby. Douglas Hamilton, the firm's senior litigation partner, was checking his watch, the same man who'd laughed at Richard's jokes about his stepdaughter playing janitor at their holiday party. Your expansion request, I continued, opening a different file on my computer, is actually quite interesting. Especially the part about your firm's substantial growth and prestigious client list. Richard's face tightened as I pulled up detailed occupancy reports. Your billable hours have dropped 15% in the last quarter. 3 major clients have switched to competing firms. And your prestigious corner office has the highest energy consumption and lowest efficiency rating in the building. I turned the screen so he could see the data I'd gathered during my maintenance days. Not exactly the picture of success you presented at Mother's birthday dinner last month. Those are confidential business metrics, he protested weakly. Nothing is confidential from the building owner, I reminded him. Every utility bill, every after-hours access log, every client meeting schedule, I have it all. Just like I had access to it when I was changing your office trash bags while you worked late pretending to be busier than you were. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Reynolds, Sarah's voice carried just a hint of satisfaction. The Sterling and Associates partners are asking about the delay. Richard's hand went to his tie again. Maria, surely we can come to an arrangement, as family. Family. I raised an eyebrow. Like when you convinced Mother I shouldn't be invited to your firm's charity gala because, and I quote, the help shouldn't mix with the guests. I pressed the intercom. Sarah, please send up the partners. And bring in the new lease proposals. New lease proposals? Richard's carefully maintained composure cracked further. Oh yes, I smiled, pulling out a thick folder. You see, while you were filing this expansion request, I was fielding inquiries from other law firms. Firms that understand the value of efficient space utilization and modern energy management. Firms that don't rely on their address to mask declining performance. The elevator chime announced the partner's arrival. Richard's face showed pure panic now. Don't worry, Richard, I said, standing to greet his colleagues. I'm sure your experience in maintenance and facilities management will help you adjust to a smaller, more efficient office space. Perhaps on a lower floor. The office doors opened, and Richard Sterling, the man who'd spent years undermining my ambitions, had to watch as his partners walked in to meet their landlord. Their real landlord. The partners' reactions played out like a perfectly orchestrated symphony of shock. Douglas Hamilton's handshake froze mid-extension. Patricia Chin, head of corporate law, nearly dropped her designer briefcase. And Thomas Wright, the senior partner who'd once asked me to serve drinks at a firm event, looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Gentlemen, Miss Chin," I greeted them professionally, "welcome to my office. Though I believe some of you might remember me better in my maintenance uniform." "The cleaning girl?" Thomas Wright whispered, his face cycling through various shades of red. "The building owner," I corrected him, gesturing to the chairs. "Please sit. We have much to discuss about Sterling and Associates' future in this property." Richard had shrunk into his chair, his usual commanding presence completely evaporated. The partners took their seats, legal training kicking in as they tried to process this dramatic shift in power dynamics. "Now then," I pulled up the building's comprehensive analytics on the large screen behind my desk. "Let's discuss your firm's actual performance versus the claims in your expansion request." Patricia Chin, ever the quick thinker, started reviewing the data. Her face paled as she recognized the implications. "These numbers are quite different from what you've been told, I imagine," I finished for her. "Amazing what you learn about a business when you've had after-hours access to their offices for years." "This is highly irregular," Douglas Hamilton attempted to regain control. "Our firm's internal metrics are exactly what I said they were during last month's partners meeting," Richard finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "I just presented them differently in the expansion request." The silence that followed was deafening. "So," Thomas Wright turned to Richard, years of partnership crumbling under the weight of reality, "when you assured us the building management was eager to accommodate our expansion." "He was unaware that I own not just this building," I interjected, "but 3 others on this block, including the one where your largest competitor just signed a lease for their new tech-enabled offices." The partners' heads snapped toward Richard, who seemed to be attempting to disappear into his chair. "However," I continued, pulling out new documents, "I have a proposition that might interest you all, though it requires some organizational changes at Sterling and Associates." Patricia Chin, her legal mind already calculating the possibilities, leaned forward. "What kind of changes?" "First," I displayed the building's modernization plans. "Your firm needs complete technological and operational restructuring. Your current setup wastes energy, space, and resources. I have plans for a state-of-the-art legal facility under new management." "New management?" Douglas Hamilton's eyes narrowed. "Yes," I smiled, sliding individual folders to each partner. "Starting with a new managing partner. One who understands modern business operations and efficient resource utilization." Richard finally found his voice. "You can't just..." "Actually, I can..." I cut him off. "Your lease terms, which you apparently never read fully, give the building owner significant oversight of tenant operations, especially when they impact property value and efficiency." I turned to the partners. "Your choice is simple: modernize under new leadership or find new offices. Though good luck matching these rates anywhere else in Manhattan." The partners were already reading the proposals, their expressions shifting from shock to intrigue as they saw the potential benefits. "And Richard," I added, enjoying the moment perhaps more than I should, "I believe the maintenance department has an opening. The pay isn't much, but you might learn something about real property management." As the partners began discussing the terms among themselves, deliberately excluding Richard from the conversation, my phone buzzed with a message from Mother. "Darling, Richard just canceled our country club membership. Said something about changing circumstances. Is there something I should know?" I looked at my stepfather, now sitting alone while his partners plotted the future of his firm without him, and replied, "Just some overdue lessons in property management, Mom. We can discuss it over dinner in my building's penthouse restaurant." The restaurant he'd refused to let me enter 3 years ago when I was just the help. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about letting them discover exactly how wrong they've been, one floor at a time. The aftermath of that meeting reshaped not just Sterling and Associates, but the entire family dynamic. The first changes came swiftly. The partners voted unanimously to accept my modernization proposal, with Patricia Chin stepping up as managing partner. Richard's corner office was promptly converted into a collaborative workspace. My mother's reaction when she finally learned the full story over dinner in my penthouse restaurant was a complex mixture of pride and regret. "All those nights," she whispered, staring out over the Manhattan skyline, When he told me you were wasting your time, I should have seen what you were building. You weren't supposed to see, I replied, sipping wine that cost more than Richard's precious watch. That was the whole point. The maitre d' approached our table, the same man who'd once turned me away on Richard's orders. Ms. Reynolds, the new tenants from the 47th floor are requesting a meeting about their renovation plans. Schedule it for tomorrow, I smiled, noting how he carefully avoided mentioning that those new tenants were Richard's former partners. And please send up that special reserve champagne. Mother and I are celebrating. The same champagne Richard always insisted was reserved for real business leaders? Mother asked, a hint of irony in her voice. The very same. My phone buzzed with an update from building management. Richard had finally cleared out his office. Security footage showed him carrying his boxes past the maintenance desk where I'd once worked, a journey that seemed to physically pain him. But the real karma came the following week at the country club, the one Richard had used as his power base for years. As the new owner of their building through one of my holding companies, I'd been automatically granted a premium membership. The same membership they denied me 3 years ago when Richard blocked my application. The building owner is always welcome, the club manager gushed, not realizing the irony. Though I'm afraid Mr. Sterling's membership has been discontinued. The news spread through Manhattan's business circles like wildfire. The prestigious Sterling and Associates was now Chin, Hamilton and Wright, operating from a state-of-the-art facility in my building. Their first major client under the new leadership? My property management company. Richard's attempt to save face led to one final delicious moment of revelation. At a major business dinner, he tried to play off the changes as his own decision, claiming he'd stepped back to explore new opportunities. Really? I asked loudly from across the table, silencing the room. How's that maintenance position working out? I heard you're still struggling with the cleaning schedules.